Hey, good morning. For those of you who are on Pacific time, which is going to be most of you, um, we are going to be starting this shortly. We do want to give a little time just for people to trickle in. We know how those meetings just ended for you, and anyway. So we'll wait probably 2 minutes before we get this thing started. Well, welcome. Thank you very much for joining. I think we have some people still trickling in, so I'm glad that we waited just a few minutes. But just wanted to welcome you to this webinar. We're very excited about this. I'm Benjamin Clements with SOS, and we're very excited about this webinar about ransomware defense strategies. And by the way, just as a side topic, I'm a photographer. And for those of you who are in Washington, I don't know if you can guess what that picture is over my shoulder. um, okay, Snoqualmie Falls. It's one of my favorite pictures I've ever taken, and yes, it stays right there, even though I'm in Tennessee. Anyway, let me start this by just getting a few prereqs out of the way. This is a Teams webinar, so we have disabled any audio and video. We do have the Q&A, so if you have any questions, please put that in the Q&A. But there's nothing wrong with Teams, at least not today. The audio and video are just disabled for this. Also, this is being recorded. So after this event, please feel free to share the link with your colleagues or even other municipalities that missed this. And by the way, a special thanks to Data On for contacting many of you for helping us get the word out on this. So again, welcome. My name is Benjamin Clements. I'm CEO with SOS. I've had the pleasure of meeting many of you at ACES. We've been there at the last 7 events. And if I haven't met you, please come to ACES, come to the Data On booth. Please come and meet me or send me an email. I get nothing out of this for ACES. It's a great event. It's a great event to share information. In fact, it was kind of part of this that why this webinar even came to be. We have been hearing about a lot of anxiousness about these ransomware attacks that have been happening recently. And we want to have a call to action to be prepared for the inevitable. Boy, that's a hard word to say. And for the future. So this webinar is to be informative. We won't go through product lines or product features. We will mention some company names, but mainly for validity. What we want to do is focus on strategy and self-reflection. So therefore, we invited Salim Ruffin, who has 13 years of experience educating government customers, to bring in his thought process, to bring in his mindset. And even though he is with Veeam, he has dedicated himself to educating people of not just talking about feature sets, but taking a bigger picture. Salim, welcome.
Appreciate it, Benjamin. Thank you for having me. That was the best intro one could ever wish for. That being said, I just want to let the audience know on the Q&A, I have Joshua Yu. He is our senior engineer and architect. So as we go through the webinar, any questions, concerns, just put that in the Q&A and Joshua will jump on it straight away.
Thank you, Salim. So just real quick background about SOS. We are Memphis-based. Yes, you can tell I don't have a Washington accent. And we do have running water in Tennessee. That has always been coming up in the SOS booth. Anyway, we've been in business for 30 years. We have a customer that's been with us all 30 years. And we have expertise in various areas, including security compliance, disaster recovery, local AI. One of the things that we pride ourselves on is results focused. In other words, we want to meet the needs of our customers and not just focus on profits first. I think that's all that I really need to say about us. So Salim, let's go ahead and just jump right in here because they're not here to hear me speak. They're here to hear somebody with subject matter expertise. So can you tell us a little bit about this?
Absolutely, and I appreciate it again. So just as an overview, Veeam we're very proud to be in business more than 15 years, innovating year after year, but more importantly, answering the call of our customers. I think we can all agree the days of simply performing a tape backup and going about our business are long gone, right? You'll notice that as we go through the webinar here, there are so many things that are going to be top of mind. As an example, backup, of course, is the foundation of our protection layer. But we're going to talk about a bunch of things: intelligence, data security, more importantly than anything, and obviously making sure you have a viable recovery path forward. So again, thank you, Benjamin and team, and all of you for having Joshua and I as a guest. We put together a small agenda. This agenda is we're going to talk about something called a DRMM. Please pay attention. I will reveal what that acronym means shortly. We're going to talk about the posture, review it, talk about real threats that are out there in the ecosystem, how the threat works, and obviously talk about security and the desired. Lots of great information to adhere to. The first order of business for me is really educating as far as the life cycle, if you will. What do I do from start to finish? And I think this webinar represents preparation. Let's review what we need to put in line. Once we have that, the outcome should be we have a detection path, containment path, eradication, recovery path, and clearly post-incident get-together. Kind of what it says relative to point number 6. What did we learn from this incursion? What did we learn from this bad actor or bad actors? It's a really great conversation, Benjamin. I think one of the key factors is, and we'll jump right to number 1. We know what to do when it happens. I think that's the core foundation, and what I'll assume and what is that if we have those questions, if those questions exist right now, by the end of this webinar, we'll have all answered. What say you, Benjamin?
Yeah, And I think that's a great start because, I mean, just the very fact of saying, do you know what to do when it happens is, a long time ago, we had some conversations with the municipality that wasn't in Washington. And the concept was, hey, we have one VM go down. Do we fail over to our disaster recovery site? Well, we need to really know what to do. We don't want to fail over our whole, 400 VMs over to somewhere else. If one VM goes down, we need to have some other, steps in place, some other processes. So I think number one, I mean, we typically overlook that and say, yes, that's simple, but we also need to break that down.
Absolutely, absolutely. And throughout this presentation, we're going to do exactly that. So well said, sir. So we have, let's start off with a simple question. Benjamin, why don't you lead us into this one?
Yeah, so this has been asked. So what is the role of backup? Okay. Um, do I use backup to fight ransomware? Is that a actual, a real question? I mean, if you saw on the first 6 questions that Salim shared, you notice that backup was not even mentioned in those. It was talking about a strategy. So how do you truly fight ransomware? Is backup, is that all that we need to focus on?
Great question, Benjamin. I think the clear answer to that is there is an ecosystem that is needed to protect any infrastructure against ransomware. The backup should be the last resort, if you will. Look at backup as that as that our insurance. I have it, but clearly I don't want to have to use it because that means there was an accident, there was some relative disaster, and I now have to respond accordingly. Right? It's always good to have. It's key to have all sorts of different type of data recovery methodologies, backup, replication. Benjamin, you mentioned it when you referred to as a failover process. So great. It's again important to have those variables in place, but again, it is part of a grander ecosystem relative to fighting ransomware. So that's my long-winded answer. A short answer is no. Can't just be backup. It has to
Right.
be parts working in tandem with one another.
Yeah, I don't just go and get fire insurance for my house and then start burning things in my house and say, oh, it's fine. I have fire insurance. No, let's first blow out the match, even if you do have fire insurance for the house. And that's what I
Well
think
said.
backup is.
Yeah, well put, sir. So for everyone joining the call, have joined the call, anyone who's going to watch this thereafter, the DRMMs is refers to a data resilience maturity model. Now, in this model, there are 3 main steps. Number 1, let's make sure we have people and process to execute. Now that we have the people and process, the next thing and the key variable is strategy. I think, Benjamin, you touched on it a bit earlier. If I have a single virtual machine or a single physical machine, what's my strategy around that? Of course, we're not going to fail over the entire infrastructure. However, the strategy is discerning if this one VM or this box goes down, what effect does it have to business? What effect does it have to mission? And that allows us to really look at what we call RTO, recovery time objective. Is this a mission critical major system that needs to be reanimated straight away? Or is it something that, hey, you know what? I can take the time to, let's say, build another box or recover that from backup as we fit. The last piece, the technology. In this day and age, we have to make sure we're covering all aspects. We touched about it a bit earlier on an earlier slide, but here's how that fits into the ecosystem of what we refer to as the DRMM. A backup, which is foundational, a recovery methodology as it applies to different data sets. Okay? Not one size fits all there. The architecture, the portability, right? Can I actually move this to a secondary data center, to the cloud, and have it work as efficiently as it did before? Security, of course, and what I love, intelligence and reporting. Being able to look at an infrastructure analytically an example, and Benjamin and I were talking earlier. If I'm monitoring my infrastructure and I understand, let's say from a 6 months perspective, 6 month perspective, my IO is relative to the data stores, network, all of these things are relative. It's business as usual. But if I see some unusual spikes in the data flow, if I see something odd in the network, again, in the day and time that we're in, it needs to be investigated. Let's see what happened, right? Let's take that information, and that's the intelligence part of it. Oh, there was a unscheduled SQL backup, and that's why the network spiked. We want to be able to explain exactly everything that's going on, because I think we can all agree, ransomware, really, as an example, is encryption, which increases CPU, increases memory, right? Increases IO on data stores or hard disks. So we want to make sure, relative to that intelligence and reporting piece, that we are identifying these anomalies and investigating appropriately. Introducing the DRMM, we have 4 pillars or 4 steps, if you will. Now, I'm going to pause here for a second because these steps are really self-reflection. If I'm the owner, or if I'm a data center administrator, or even if I'm a CISO, I want to look in the proverbial mirror. I want to understand where I sit relative to this stack. Right? We're going to go from basic, intermediate, advanced to best in class, and we're going to talk about all the little pieces in there. The first one is what we refer to as basic, reactive, and manual. Now, Benjamin, one of the key variables here is, and what I want to express to the audience, if you are in this bucket, don't hold your head down, hold it high. We're here to educate you on how to get out of it. Okay? So a couple of quick things, and I'll kind of bounce around here a bit. Number one is look at how you're actually performing backup relative to those workloads. Are we protecting everything? Maybe we categorize our infrastructure. What's mission critical, what's not mission critical, right? So I think we can all agree the steps here are relative to reactive, right? That's basically the idea. Oh no, there's a system down. Let me go to the backup. Is the backup clean? Where can I recover it to? Who's responsible for not only the front end of the infrastructure, but where backup happens, and who's responsible for the recovery methodology? So again, to kind of lay the land here, we surveyed several hundred data center administrators. Right? It was a simple, I believe, about 20 or 30 questions, and it was completely random. And we just said, hey, let's see where people sit. Right? So this is tier 1, or the basic level, and everything that's included in it. So we'll talk about the numbers in a second. Actually, I think I have 44% of the people that responded feel that they're in this particular category. So we want to thank those people that were honest with respect to the survey and allowed us to record this information. This is really an eye-opener, Benjamin. What's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, to your point, I'm glad that people are being honest, because as long as you're self-reflecting, as long as you're not saying, "Oh yeah, we're the best," you're not going to get better. I mean, we have to be honest, and we have to identify where are those pieces that we need to get better on this. So, yeah, I mean, I appreciate that the honesty there.
No, absolutely. Yeah. Let's see here. Next step: reliable but limited. Here we have, we have 30% of the respondents said, no, I have clear RPO and RTO targets. I mean, I am using immutability, right? Retention, so on and so forth. I even go through ransomware simulations, which I think is key, aka disaster simulations. But in this particular, and also using a degree of security monitoring. But we say it's reliable, but a bit limited, because you'll see we're missing a couple of key pieces here. I'll give you a bit of a hint, a bit of innovation, right, if you will. So Benjamin, I know this presents a comfort zone, really, because 30% of people are looking at it and saying, well, no, I think what I have is reliable, but I could always impress upon. So,
Right.
as our audience sees, as we go up the stack rank, we're getting some good numbers here. Again, thank you for the honesty of the respondents, but I think one of the key variables, and Benjamin, I think did talk about this subject, is the idea of immutability,
Right.
right? Any comments on that piece?
Yeah. So, this concept of immutability is actually nothing new. So think about, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, when we would have tape backups. If you have that tape and you actually take it out of the tape backup, and that's the key, if you left it in the tape backup, it's no longer immutable. But if you take it out of that tape backup, it's kind of immutable, at least if you don't put a magnet beside it. But that data isn't changing at that point. Now, of course, then some of y'all remember, after CD-ROMs came, the worms, the write once, read many, etc. And now there's so much more of optimized immutability that we can do. The other thing I wanted to mention, though, is immutability also depends on not just the backup, but like we were in a conference that they were talking about. Remember, you need to also make sure that bad actors can't come and delete the whole server. So just because I have immutability doesn't mean I can't come and take out that hard drive and trash that system. So we also need to think about all the pieces that are required for that immutability.
Very well said, sir. And I think one thing to bring up, that story about the tape, it's interesting, and that's why our mission is to educate. There are several, dare I say, obviously I don't want to talk about who they are, but what's important is inconvenience. I think it's a thing to address, because
Right.
we were privy to a company, if you will, that used tape, but left the tapes in the library, left it in the drive. So they were hit by ransomware, and the comment was, actually, they gave me a call and they said, "Hey, listen, we've been hit. We're going to recover from tapes. More than happy to assist with that. Is that a live tape, or is it was it tape ejected?" And I found myself educating on that perspective, what a live tape is, right? And unfortunately, the ransomware or the bad actors, they were able to get to the tape data, and that particular company I'm referring to had to rebuild from scratch. So the notion there was, wow, despite being hit by ransomware, you're saying if I either physically or automated the eject, I could have been able to recover straight away from my tape perspective. And it is the true air gap media there. So, yeah, no, totally well said. Again, Benjamin, obviously you and I are in lockstep. Definitely agree with that. So that tape story is one of the key factors, right? That our audience can walk away with. So if you're using tape, that's key. Okay. Now, you know, we kind of took a step back and we said, wow, 74% of everyone that we've surveyed either fall into a basic or intermediate recovery response. And that's what we want to improve upon. So if you feel that you're in the 74 percentile, what's important is to reach out. Benjamin is the key person here, to kind of fill the void, connect the dots, if you will, and get people to the two tiers that we're going to refer to. Benjamin, I'll be fair. And I don't want to demean these 74 people or 74 percentile, but again, back to that honesty perspective. Once we look in the proverbial mirror, we discern where we sit. It allows us to not to, I don't want to say to fix it, but it allows us to remediate these things, right? To move up the stack, if you will. So for me, I got to be honest, I look forward not to the end of this presentation, but I look forward to the feedback. I look forward to the conversations, right? That people will come forth with and say, no, this is an excellent way to, again, self-attest, if you will, self-attestation for that matter. So before I move on to the To the next slide, 74%, Benjamin. That's that's almost the whole bulk, right?
Yeah. And I will say this to everybody listening, it can be a little bit overwhelming because you say, okay, I've been to webinars like this that they just tell us and they tell us that we're not doing right and they're telling us that we need to improve, but we don't know how to improve. Salim's got a great slide coming up that is going to show specific steps that you can use right now to start taking those steps to get out of that 74%. So I want you to look at this as there is hope to get out of this 74%.
Absolutely. I think it's one of Benjamin's favorite slide, if not the favorite slide, that we here at Veeam actually refer to it now as the Benjamin slide, because it really highlighted a bunch of different layers. So well said, sir. Hey, we have a question, and I think we're all waiting for this one. So Benjamin, why don't you take us away on this?
Okay, so again, back to the immutability. So we're talking about, immutability does create its own challenges. Like, for instance, when a customer says, "Hey, I've got an immutability backup. Hey, I think I'm going to keep the data, let's say a year." And then 3 months into it, they realize how much they're being charged for a cloud immutability, and they weren't prepared. They weren't prepared about that and realized, oh, I'm gonna have to keep that data for a year, or I'm gonna have to, take other steps to see could I actually destroy the whole thing. So you really need to think about that. You need to have those conversations, and then verifying the integrity. How are we going to verify or restore from that the validity of that data, as opposed to like just a normal repository that's on a Windows server that doesn't have immutability.
Yep, great question. So I'm gonna approach this back. So the first thing is being able to verify the recoverability of your backups. That's number one. So we're backing this stuff up. You're having you got a backup process moving forward. Backups is done. It's resting on the disk. The next perspective is, how do I know that backup to work? So again, one of the call to actions is backup verify. To be able to use that, or at least the concept of every backup that I write to disk, or if we segment it, all of my mission critical, if we tier our applications, once they're backed up. And here's something that's key, Benjamin. Before I move it or copy it to the cloud, secondary disk, or to tape, that assurance that the data is recoverable, right, through that verification process. Now, on the
That's a good point.
immutability side of the coin, it's an interesting perspective. And what happens is, as data center administrators, we owe it to ourselves to be able to recover straight away. One of the key variables that we'll discuss shortly is just how many copies of the data from a DR archive perspective are you facilitating? So here's an example. I'm backing up locally, and I have a repository that's specific for my availability, right? Recover quickly. Now I can also take a copy of that data from backup to cloud, which can initiate the immutability flag. I can have it to disk, another way to achieve immutability. And I can also put it on tape. The net there is, if, let's say, Benjamin, you delete a picture of something you cherish, right? That's a recovery. No big deal. We're going to go to the backup. We're going to get that recovered for you. But if your system has been hit by ransomware, well, for example, let's just say, all right, well, based on what methodologies and technologies I have in my infrastructure, I could either go to the backup, which I'm not certain has been corrupted, or I can go to the secondary copy of the backup, which is immutable, and is either in the cloud to a secondary disk or on tape. And as Benjamin pointed out earlier, and as I seem to be repeating myself, as we go through this presentation, you'll be aware of how to align yourself. So that immutability concept, to those that are listening to us, that's a must. And again, Benjamin, you point out something. Yes, if I have my data on-prem for 30 days, if that's immutable and I'm 22 days into it and I need to recover something, well, let's focus on that methodology. Let's improve upon that methodology by adhering to what we refer to, and I'm sure you've all heard the 3-2-1 rule, right? We'll talk about it in a second. 3 copies of your data, 2 different medias, 1 offsite. That is the key to ensuring there are multiple paths to recovery, given the immutability concept. It's configured appropriately across the infrastructure. There should be no worry. All right, so next pillar here is what we refer to as mature. And I kind of told on myself, right? There it is, that 3-2-1-1-0 rule. For the first 3, I want to concentrate on the first 3 numbers. Again, 3 copies of your data. So one copy can be, one copy, or copy 1 is production. Copy number 2 is backup. And copy number 3 is where the conversation. Where is that third iteration of the data set? Is it in the cloud? Is it in a DR, physical DR location? Is it on it? It could be in Iron Mountain, for instance, your third copy. And if even that's the case, we now have to RTO. Can you get that tape of Iron Mountain into your data center, into the tape machine, and producing, getting that data back to disk? So any way you approach it, we have to iron out a methodology. Now, this mature and adaptive, another thing to call out, integrated security. And I think what you'll see at the latter portion of this presentation, that's key. There has to be some relative. We saw in the DRMM slide earlier, what is the process around the integrated security systems? Does IT and operations have a say in it? Are we all communicating collectively? And I'm kind of jumping around here, but I think advanced orchestration and automated recovery. Again, we're prepared if something happens at 4 in the morning, right? And you have a data center team there, and they say, I'm seeing some anomalies in here, and these anomalies are indicative to ransomware. High spike in CPU. I see there are 3 or 4, maybe 5 virtual machines or physical devices that are just operating way outside of the norm. Who does that person wake up? They call Benjamin. Hey, Benjamin, I have a thing here. I'm seeing these anomalies. Benjamin has to make a decision. Does he need to go into the office, review the data, discern what the process should be? Or is the data center team at 4 in the morning simply educating Benjamin on what's to happen, because there's already a run book in play? There are already procedures in place that Benjamin can be 100% confident in, because he and his team have practiced this. Failover or disaster recovery scenarios weekly, monthly, quarterly, right? So I think, Benjamin, and I'll turn it over to you after just one last thing. I think one of the great things to get to is an area of comfort that as an individual or as a team or as a company or as however you want to look at it, that no matter the situation relative to data security, you're confident in your ability to meet the needs and get ahead of it. So, Benjamin, this is going to be this is really, this and the next one is going to be a focus. And I think the concept, the overall or simple concept, is to say, before anything, I pull maybe 1 or 2 of these bullets. Am I adhering to the 3-2-1 rule? And do I have real-time detection? That, I'm just pulling out 2. I'm certain our audience and even you, Benjamin, may have a couple of favorites here, but I'll turn it over to you, buddy. What do you think about this mature and adaptive posture?
Yeah, So the first thing that I think about is when somebody's looking at just from a backup standpoint, they would say integrated security IT ops. Okay, so my SQL user that I use to get into the backup should be different than this user to get to the OS, which is great. That's what we should be doing. But it's not just that. It's integrated security in terms of the security posture, not just the backups. And again, he'll have the Benjamin slide coming up. Thank you for that. That I think that whole concept of integrating the integrated security, IT, and ops, that should be in everything that we do when it comes to data, not just the data protection, but also the security posture that we have. So I think that's a big deal there. And the tested incident response playbooks. I think that's critical because you want to make a plan that you can execute when you don't want to execute a plan. In other words, when you actually need this response playbook are the times that things are going to be very stressful. You're not going to be thinking correctly, and we need to avoid the knee-jerk reactions. We need to have a response in place, because those knee-jerk reactions actually can get us into more trouble than the original problem that we had. For example, take my example of one VM goes down, we immediately fell over 400 VMs to another side, and we don't have that other side quite ready. Well, we may have just created a huge problem for ourselves. So instead, we need to have this response playbook of, oh, one VM went down. Maybe we look at doing something for that one VM. Is it isolated? Is it just that one? But to have those in place, you create those during a moment not of stress, so that when you come under stress, you can execute this thing and not hurt yourself even worse than the situation you're already in. Does that make sense?
That's spot on. I think if you'll allow me to oversimplify,
Sure.
I think we all want to avoid the RGE. In my space, that refers to resume generating event. We are responsible for these data centers. And believe it or not, everyone looks at us, and I'm saying us, all of us, in the data center as subject matter experts. So if something comes up, I think leadership is going to have an expectation that Benjamin or whomever is going to have a solid answer approach to what's inevitable. Well said, buddy. Now, self-optimizing. This is what we refer to as best in class. And it's interesting. 8% of the respondents fell into this bucket. Now, again, this is the goal. Okay? And you'll notice here, everything that we've talked about, or let's just say touched on, is inclusive here. AI is becoming a part of the ecosystem. The zero trust concept is something that in my space, in federal, we adhere to, right? And the zero trust perspective could be, if I'm a data center administrator and I'm having a bad day, accidentally delete production data, or I accidentally delete, well, it should not be the infrastructure. I shouldn't have that power. We look at that as role-based access, okay? Or what we refer to as four eyes authentication. If I do something that's critical to the infrastructure, it cannot be followed through unless Benjamin, for example, sees the alert in the system and approves it. So we have, that no or zero or no trust perspective. I think the other concept, as we referred to earlier, just named it advanced techniques. We cannot live in a day and age where we're backing up to a single repository and calling it a day. Hey, I got the backup done. No, we have to adhere to, and let's take away ransomware for just a second. Hardware failure, human mistakes, electricity goes down. I can, natural disaster, if you will. So I think it's important to, we've said ransomware several times during this webinar, but again, to everyone who's listening, ransomware is relative. It could be any disaster, anything that our leadership, if you will, is going to look at us to resolve. And real-time monitoring and insights to action. I think the great thing here, I'm going to use an example with reporting. Imagine, if you will, AI in reporting is letting you know, hey, over the past year, your data set has grown 230%. That data set is going up. We have to make sure that we have the proper protection and recovery methodologies for not only the growing data sets, all of that data, right? Let's take foundational databases like SQL and Oracle. Let's take the concept of legal hold, forever hold relative to government. These are all the things that we have to adhere to. So when we say legal hold, I think that equivocates to about 7 years. You have to perform that. That data has to be ready to go, protected for all of that time. So this concept just isn't short term. This is long term as well. So one other piece to point out is, and we're going to go back to the R word, right? Real-time ransomware detection and incident response. Please understand that ransomware and bad actors, they're innovating day, week after week, month after month. They're getting better at what they do. And I think it's a key here that you have to ask yourself, do they really want the data? Or are they just trying to be disruptful? Or all of the above? They see a opportunity, and they want to they want to grab the data. One thing that, and I'll turn it over to you in a second, Benjamin. What we were talking about is, let's think about the future.
Yeah.
We want to make sure that no bad actor can get the data. And I say that because, of course, data is encrypted at flight, data is encrypted at rest, but what about quantum computing in the future? Those quantum mechanics, if you will, that you can go take that technology in the future and go back and say, hey, I have this data set. I stole it 4.5 years ago. I have not been able to get into this because the technology didn't exist, but now it does. So I have this data, and I plan on cracking that safe open, taking a look inside and seeing if it's valuable to me. And that person continues that bad role. So Benjamin, and even in my space, in my time in the space, the future presents it has me a little scared about the technology
Yeah.
to come. And that's
Yeah.
the concept of the predictions. It's the concept of making sure we stay on top of our technology. We bring AI into it as well,
Right.
because we have to stay neck and neck, eye to eye with those bad actors and respond accordingly. Benjamin, I'll turn it
Right.
over to you, buddy. What say you?
So there's so much to dig into here. We only have 17 minutes left, and I would definitely want to make sure that we get to that kill slide, that Benjamin slide.
The
But let me
Benjamin
just say
slides, sir. The Benjamin
the two
slides.
things. Yeah. So let me just say two things here. So one, yes, the future is a little scary. I mean, we're heavy into AI, and yes, all the things that AI can do, it is exciting, and it's also very scary. So thinking about the future, thinking about readiness for the future, I think is very important. And also, I want to be fair about this slide. This slide is kind of like wisdom. The wise person receives wise counsel. A wise person is always seeking wisdom. This self-optimizing is always, you're going to be looking at it. You're going to be, you really have to be on top of things and know that, depending on what happens with quantum computing, depending on what happens with AI, we're going to have to have a few pivots that we're going to have to, the number two, advanced backup techniques. Those techniques will be changing, and you have to be a little bit more on your game than if you're just reactive. Reactive, hey, we save lots of money, we're just going to react to everything. But there's a price that you pay. Well, there's also a price that you're going to pay on this one. You have to be on top of your game. You've got to be hiring the the best people, the best consultants, people that you trust, etc. So, some of these things will be driven a little bit by budget. Some people may not be able to make all of these things just because of budget. There's certain near real-time systems that we would like to use, but if we have to replicate every single thing back and forth, maybe that is out of our budget, but it doesn't mean that we don't look at this as our goal.
When you said something, you nailed it. So there is budget, and I know, especially in the government space, budget dictates everything. But let's step aside for a second. Be prepared, right?
Yeah.
There are always going to be budget concerns, always going to be budget constraints. I think the messaging here is provide an eye-opening assessment of the infrastructure to leadership relative to these 4 pillars. Now, if we don't have budget, we do have the plan. This is the
Right.
plan in place. This is the plan we need to put in place to execute, and you execute accordingly, right? I don't think anyone's saying, hey, you need to buy it right now. I think what we're saying is, again, let's all educate ourselves on the things, the methodologies that we do. There could be people on this call right now that fall into the 8%, and we say to you, well done, right? But those that are not in that 8%, that could learn and that could take this and go to their senior leadership and say, hey, conceptually, some ideas. I think that's the real takeaway here. All right, so let's go back here, kind of a self-reflection. I think, obviously it's in green for a reason. Just a little plug there. Sorry, Benjamin. But more important than anything is to the audience, please take the time. Reach out to Benjamin, but take the time to see where you are on the stack and then make the appropriate changes. So really key there. So great, another great question. Benjamin, why don't you take us away, buddy?
So this concept of clean room. So what some of you may not know what the concept of a clean room applies. It's not just we have a heavy air filter in our server room, but what is a clean room and why is it important to a disaster recovery strategy?
I think this is an amazing question because, while clean room isn't a physical thing, it's a concept, right? So here's an idea, or here's a walkthrough. I see that my infrastructure is riddled with different degrees of ransomware. Right? And let's just go extreme. The keys to the castle were left on the sidewalk. Someone took the keys, they got in, and now they're everywhere, right? So if I, as a data center admin, can say, "Oh no, production has been sullied," for lack of a better word, I know I have backups, copies, replicas, replication of the data. I know it's immutable. I know it's encrypted. I know I've taken the proper steps with respect to my backups. However, production, in this example, is infected. Now, the question is, since production is infected, well, clearly I'm not going to take a clean backup and rehydrate it or recover it in an infected infrastructure.
Mhm.
Maybe I take that clean backup and I convert it into a virtual machine in Azure or AWS. Or maybe I'm using host to host or VM replication from site to site. And if I can ensure that my DR site that contains my replicas, if I can ensure they're clean, well, that is a clean room, right? So to the audience here, again, imagine if you, again, not to be repetitive, but if you don't have confirmation that the infrastructure is completely cleaned, I mean Clorox clean, right? Just spick and span. Let's consider that maybe until the audit is done, until the clean sweep is done, maybe we recover these boxes or these virtual machines or however you want, whatever workload you have. Maybe we put these into a hyperscaler. Maybe we put this into Azure, for instance, infrastructure as a service. I convert the backup into a VM in the cloud. Yeah, and I let it run there for a certain amount of time until I can ensure that I can fail it back on-prem into an absolute clean environment, AKA clean room. So that's another key variable. Does that require a budget? Absolutely. I think, again, in today's day and age, disaster recovery has a budget. Right? It's backup, it's DR, it's long term, it's short term. I think all of these things need to be considered. And even if I have a DR site, well, that's storage, that's compute racks, that's a building, air conditioning that I have to pay for, right? So I think the clean room, aka the budget room, we'll call it. I think that's going to be key in consideration to what does the future hold. What, instead of having the basic uh, kind of step there, which is reactive, we have the mature step, right? Or the best in class that says, hey, definitively, if anything happens here, I know I can fail over to X in 62 seconds. I know I can sit there for as long as I need to. I've already negotiated my spending, my costs as it relates to a hyperscaler or DR. And I know my recovery time objective is in a certain amount of time in order to get my on-prem clean and ready to receive the data again. So forgive me, I know that was a bit long-winded, but I wanted to be clear about what the clean room is and obviously what it isn't, right?
Yeah, I
Did I
think
nail
it
that,
makes us all
Benjamin?
think. Yeah, I think it makes us all think about, so how far are we away from a clean room in our existing environments, and what does that look like? Because of course, depending on what your infrastructure is, this could mean different things for you. And depending on, if you have a Azure policy versus an AWS policy versus a colo policy, it can mean very different things. So yeah, I think it makes us all think. I think that's really good.
Spot on. I know we're getting short on time. We got about 8 minutes, but one thing I'm going to go through is really quick. We here at Veeam, it's important for us to monitor just what bad actors, ransomware is out there, right? Where it's being used. So Benjamin, if you don't mind, for the sake of time, I'm gonna go through the next 4 slides just from an update and education perspective here. So here are all the bad actors out there, what they're doing. But what we also learned is, there are worms, ransomware bots, if you will, that hit financial services specifically, healthcare specifically, right? And the level of disruption they bring, and also, industry, right? But, as it relates to government, I think all bets are off, right? Local, state, and local, even government, even federal, civilian, and DoD facilities are constantly under attack, and it's not just by bad actors here in the U.S. This is global, right? I won't make mention specifically, but I think we can all agree of the different bad actors from different countries that try to infiltrate data sets across seas. Where government is concerned, uh, there isn't one bad actor that isn't going to try. That being said, you probably are aware, even DoD, they are using commercial grade products in in tune to what they're producing to fight this battle, right? So again, if just for the sake of time, I wanted to expedite this, but keep in mind that these small areas of concern are actually quite big, right? So just wanted to touch on that. Really quick, this is an actual ransomware letter. This is real. We've redacted the sensitive pieces of it, but you got to put yourself into perspective of, let's say you walk into work, or let's say you get this email, and it's basically saying, hey, you're done. Everything's been encrypted. You have no access, and we've allowed you to receive this last email. And then, show's over. Now, I'll be honest with you, while I haven't received this personally with respect to the infrastructures that I've managed, if I did, I can only imagine the level of anxiety I would feel relative to this. At first, I would probably be a bit dismissive, right? I'm like, all right, Benjamin and Joshua were playing some type of prank on me. What's going on here? And then they confirm it's not them. And I go, oh my goodness, what is going on? Now, everything that we've discussed for I would say the last 53 minutes, now that all comes back into play. Now, as a real as something that this person received. It was, let me just verify that this is true, and it was true. Everything else is the procedures that you have in place. This moment is a moment in time you've prepared for. But again, I want to spend some time on the Benjamin slide, which is right here. So again, malicious email phishing, anything of that nature. What happens is it's education, right? First and foremost. If Benjamin gets an email that says, "Click here, you'll receive a $5,000 AWS gift card," Benjamin's going to know that's just crazy talk. But education is key. There may be those of us that say, use that. That's amazing. So that's the first order of business. But email filtering, antivirus, that we're very, every data protection product is dependent on having a degree or a shield, if you will, relative to that first step. The second step is, ask ourselves, do we have MFA? Right? Do we allow scripting in the infrastructure? Do we have role-based access, application control, right? Least privilege. So Benjamin, I know, I think we're good on time. We've got about 4 minutes, but I think what we want to really look at is if you start anywhere, or if you haven't, maybe MFA is number one that you put
Yeah,
in play, right?
because there's plenty of tool sets out there now. And so, don't get overwhelmed of, well, there's so much to do. Well, let's start somewhere. So start with MFA, start with your security awareness. Of
Yep.
course, you have
Absolutely.
your email filtering, but, don't, unfortunately,
Is
there
it up
are
to
some
date?
people out. Yeah,
Right?
go ahead.
Is it up to date? Have
Yeah,
you managed it? Are the definitions up to date? Didn't mean to step on you, buddy. I just wanted to throw
sure.
that out there.
That's a good point. And are your, you show here under antivirus, under EDR anti-tampering, we have to have overlapping antivirus, just because, like there was a municipality that was talking about, oh, well, we stop all of our email with antivirus, so I don't worry about as much. No, don't take anything for granted. Let's assume that there is going to be some type of issue. So let's make sure we have overlapping protection on all levels.
Absolutely.
So
And
guys,
lastly,
yeah, take a screenshot of this.
yep.
People who are watching this, this is a great slide right here.
So, and to that point, notice I refer to it as shields. Notice where the backup sits. Okay? So shield number one is awareness, education. Shield number two, proper email filtering, antivirus, right? That's rudimentary. Got to have that. Shield number three, least privilege, I won't go through them. And shield number four, privilege access, role-based, data loss protection or prevention, domain authentication, that's multi-factor again. Backup represents a copy of production. So we're going to go back to what you said originally. And there was a question that says, and I'm paraphrasing, is data protection the end all be all with respect to ransomware protection? Right? No. And you see these vectors, we'll refer to them, or these shields, however you want to refer to them. This is what's important, right? And this is how you protect not only production data, but the copy of the production data, which in tune is the backup in the backup solution. So to Benjamin's point, you'll be able to see this after after we're done here. Great slide to take a photo of. Great slide to say, hey, I can kind of see where I fit in the 4 steps simply by looking and maybe circling what we do here, maybe what we don't do. Last slide I have, one of our favorite slides, and kind of speaks to data protection. We can't do it alone, right? We here at Veeam, we work with an ecosystem of security, software, security, KMS perspectives, role-based perspectives. We work with an ecosystem to ensure, in this case, our customers are protected front to back. That being said, I'll end with 4 variables or 4 things to do. If I am infiltrated, I can recover, I can accept the loss, I can get the decryption key, or I can rebuild the data. Benjamin, myself, Caroline, and Joshua, the concept here is Because you have a secure facility, you don't have to do any of these. These aren't applicable to you because you have what's necessary. Now, I know we're short on time. It's at the hour. So what I'll do is I'm going to turn it over to Benjamin to walk us through the action item steps. And for myself, from Joshua on the Veeam side of the coin, thank you so much for having us. Hopefully this helps. Benjamin, why don't you close us down, sir?
Yeah, so just real quick, make sure that you're reviewing your current security strategy. This is not a backup issue, it's a security strategy issue. Then after you're looking at that, consider how the backup plan is incorporated in your security strategy. It should be integral. If you need help, please contact me, Benjamin C at thesosinc.com. Please come see us at the ASUS booth. We're at the Data On booth. That's coming up October 20th through 23rd. It's, again, I don't get anything for this, but we've been going to that so many years because there's great conversations. Thank you all so much for attending. Salim, anything else? I'm sorry, you're muted.
Yep, that was the only thing that went wrong today. So thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure. Look forward to working with you, your team in the future. And as I said, the biggest thing one can do is prepare for the inevitable. That being said, thank you so much from Veeam. Joshua and I thank you. Benjamin, always a pleasure, sir.
Thank you.